Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across different industries. Today, we're talking with Pam Piligian, the Chief Marketing Officer and SVP for Navy Federal Credit Union, based out of Vienna, Virginia. Pam, thanks so much for joining today. How have you been?
Great, Mark. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, that's great. Not a problem. I was looking forward to today's conversation. I've got a small handful of questions for you, but before we do that, can you tell me a little bit about Navy Federal Credit Union and what you do for them as their CMO and SVP? I'd like our audience to know what kind of organization it is and what you do to support them.
Sure, Mark. We are the largest credit union. We have 12 million members. We surpassed 12 million last month, so we're very proud of that. 159 billion in assets. So if we were a bank, we'd be, I think, the 12th largest in the nation. And really founded around serving military, veterans, and their families. Very membership oriented, and part of my role here in marketing is really driving our growth, which is about new members and prospecting and branding to make sure that we introduce who Navy Federal is to them and they see it as a relationship they want, as well as support our product engagement initiatives with our members. And then our member research department and measurement and metrics and corporate comm reporting to me too. So it's a very integrated role and one I'm honored to have.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Like it's got a lot of different facets to it, which probably keeps you on your toes and keeps you pretty busy, I would imagine.
Sure does, sure does.
So I looked at your background. You've got a very interesting background, very heavy on the marketing agency side of the world. I think it was over 30 years working at different agencies and account leadership roles, and I thought, super impressive. I'm curious, why did you decide to make the move to the client side in marketing?
Well, you kind of hit on it a little bit after I talked about what all I do here, and that is diversity and integration. And in a word, for me, it was about opportunity. Navy Federal was my client in my last role at the agency, and so I had fallen in love with the brand and the culture, and more importantly, the mission that's here. So those were really attractive to me. And then from a professional standpoint, the fact that this was going to be an integrated communications role. I saw on the agency side what I saw more and more fragmentation and more clients splitting their business across multiple providers and specialty agencies. And I really do love, part of me is a data nerd and a geek, and I love the foundation of good strategy and then building an integrated plan off of that. And I saw less of that happening on the agency side and more of it happening client side. So when there was an opportunity for me to come do that in a role that was going to be integrated, as well as for a brand and a culture and really the mission here that I really was in love with, it was an easier decision than it would have been otherwise.
That's great. Curious, something you just said about sort of the changing nature of the agency world and its relationship with clients, that you were seeing sounded like less and less involvement among the agencies in strategy conversations with clients. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, but sometimes it could be what I was really seeing happening is often the agency was at the role for strategy because from having brand planning groups as part of agency core, often you were
Right.
part of that strategic decision. Sometimes agencies, though, the strategic partners that they bring, the end result is going to be creative development
Right.
versus it being business planning and supporting. Um, what I could see happening is, you would look at a client and you'd often go to a meeting and be there with the PR agency, the direct agency, the events agency, the direct agency, the media agency. And the client owned all those pieces and parts. But as I grew up in the business a long time ago, that really was driven more by the mother agency that did the strategy and
Yeah.
then would often hire somebody to execute some of the components, but it was all off that same strategy. So for
Yeah.
me, the business had evolved where I really still wanted that seat at the table with the strategic assessment linked to business, not just creative development. And I found more and more of that was coming client side.
Do you think that is that shift was driven more by the marketers or just the agency's sort of either inability to or interest in the strategy side of the client's business?
C, all of the above. I think agencies, for the most part, let's face it, you are a creator. You're there often to make work for them. And I say work because it could be television, it could be website, it could be an experience, etc. So part of the strategy was really heavily focused on communications, and that's great because that's what the agencies specialize in. And as things grow and get more complicated, you can't be a master at all of it.
Right.
So that's where I think the fragmentation came in terms of getting somebody. Think about influencers. You need somebody as an agency that can manage those and find the right ones and measure it and monitor. That could be a full-time job on
Right.
top of corporate communications, which is both good offense and defense. And the marketing plan of it, we're all activating, I would say, in the best case, channel agnostic, where we're looking at it by the member, in our case, because we're a credit union, or a prospect. Who are you trying to talk to and how are you going to reach them? How do you follow
Yeah.
their eyeballs and their hearts and their heads? Get them to think about you and consider it, and often replace another brand. So the more of that thinking was happening on the client side.
Got it. Got it. So I'm curious, when you made the move over to the client side, what were some of the toughest things you experienced in making that move? And then on the flip side, what were some of the more surprising things to you in making that move over?
I think the hardest part for me was, as you pointed out, 30 years agency side. I saw a client's back room, our operations support via activations with the brand or the agency, sometimes in packaged goods, maybe some of the manufacturing. But you obviously had no role in terms of it happening. When you come client side, you really have to be ready to roll up your sleeves, and dive into the operations component because a lot of what we do has severe impacts, both good and bad, on frontline.
Right.
So understanding that is crucial. And you kind of think about, I know for me coming into this role, we were a service provider. We operate a call center 24/7. We also have branches that are on base or near base, 350 of those across the nation. And what we do really does impact those individuals. So operationally, trying to understand how we can support them, help them. They really, at Navy Federal, that's our secret sauce. That's our point of difference. Yes, we have digital banking, fabulous online capabilities and resources for our members, and the human channels, if you will, that physical and physical together is really what makes a
Yeah.
difference for us. So for me, understanding how that works, how do you train up, thousands of those voices to be the right to deliver the service that you as a brand are
Yeah.
promising.
Yeah.
So operationally, I've learned a lot in the 5 years I've been here, and 3 of them have been under COVID. So I feel like my learning has been on a hyperdrive.
Yeah. Wow.
To answer your question about what was easy, I'll go back to the culture, which was really interesting for me. As you may be aware, even today, we had an issue where the government might have had a shutdown where Defense DoD, Department of Defense individuals weren't going to get paid. When that happened previously, we, Navy Federal, for all of our members who have direct deposit with us, if they sign up for the program, we will go ahead and front their paycheck. So we will give them a loan so that they get paid. We felt like that's
Yeah.
crucial.
That's awesome.
So soon after I came to Navy Federal, the Coast Guard, there was another government shutdown pending, and the Coast Guard was the only armed forces group that potentially didn't get paid. Well, I don't know how much you know about the military, but the Coast Guard is not part of the DoD unless we're at war. They report in through Homeland
Did
Security.
not know that.
They are a much smaller group and they're fragmented. So I thought about it as an outsider, even though I didn't realize it, and thought, I wonder if we are going to want to front their pay like we have for so many. So I spent my time the night before really building that rationale on why it mattered and why it was still the right thing to do. And I went the next morning to our management council meeting, 17 people around the table, and not a single person thought we shouldn't.
Oh,
So
wow.
to your point about what's easy, I spent my time doing the wrong homework. It was all been like, how do we get them signed up? What do we do? How fast do we activate it, etc. And Mark and I can see each other across the screen, so I can say this. We literally was like, okay, hold up that paperwork. So what I built a argument and a rationale for, I really didn't need to, and that was so encouraging.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yes, it was a wasted time. But
Great.
those are the easy. That's been the easiest thing, and we also are very much a service brand. Our member service is member obsession. People are trained to do the right thing for the member. So that makes my job a lot easier too, in terms of putting out those brand promises.
Yeah, that's great. Any advice you'd give to a fellow agency person looking to make the move over to the client side?
If you don't have the skill already, learn to work horizontally. I have a great relationship with our CFO, which you might imagine because that's obviously who I have to work with in terms of budget investments. And marketing and advertising is an investment and not an expense. I believe that. I work with him in terms of showing him that I measure the return on the dollars like an investment
Right.
versus an expense. But I also have really strong relationships with our CTO, our CIO, our digital banking lead. So that integrated team, it really takes a team to do what we're doing. So your ability to work horizontally with the different leads is crucial. And in a lot of ways, it's going to be different than, at least than what I had done at the agency.
Yeah.
So that skill is really
Yeah,
important.
that's great advice. Yeah, I guess you can't really prepare for that, but you can, being aware of that is probably a good thing. Curious, in the 5 years you've worked with Navy Federal Credit Union, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the industry of banking and credit unions?
We are all working on a mission to do personalization at scale. Your banking is very personal, and the things you want from your bank varies. There is no one right way to bank, save money, borrow money, invest money. So in order to win at that, win share of wallet, and more importantly, win your trust as a customer and a member, we've got to be able to use your data in order to better serve you in a way that's personalization. Data is really, I often think of it as a wave. It can be the wave that just crushes you, or it can be the wave that you can master and harness and augment and mind, and it can be the wave that has a lot of great power behind it to
Right.
fuel a lot of great things. That's not easy. So it definitely is a journey, but that has really changed. I think too, if you think about what's happening in the industry, your expectations, and in the society, if you will, at this time, your expectations as a consumer have really gotten higher and higher relative to the service levels that are good and what you define as good. So we've really adjusted to make sure that we were always doing that. Now, at Navy Federal, I'm a little bit biased, but we are a service brand that always had service at the top of the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Our tagline is our members are the mission. And that's more than a tagline. It's our operations, it's how we operate and how we do things. So that has been a point of difference for us. But what we've noticed is more and more people are focusing, and more brands are focusing on experience as their point of difference. So the competition is heating up. And the competition is coming from, yes, other banks, other credit unions, as well as other industries getting into banking, whether that is insurance companies that are doing banking, tech companies that are offering bank products. So our competition, and fintechs as well. So the competition is a lot more fierce. And in a lot of ways, they're competing against one of the things that's really been a hallmark of our service.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about just differentiating the brand from, competitors like USAA and Alliant and Freedom Credit Union. How just how do you determine, what sort of process do you use to determine whether or not, your proposition remains differentiating and as compelling as it can be?
Well, it starts with the member because you have to be able to join. And some of the other credit unions, that's true for them too. But for us, that you have to be able to join. And with that membership, for us, like I said, it's active duty and veterans who served any length of time. So you could have served 4 years, you could have served 30. And as long as you left with an honorable discharge, you're able to join Navy Federal, as well as your family. And we all in the banks, often people bank by household. So we want to make sure that your family is part of that inclusion. So we start with those needs and we really build around that. But the reason I backtracked to go through who can join, as you probably heard me talk about those individual groups, you probably could think about how they're all different. Active duty, there's a good chance of deployment. Even when we're not in war, there's a chance that they're moving frequently.
Right.
They often are buying cars earlier than the general market. So how do we work with them and make sure that we can enable those things? So for example, on car buying, often young military are buying their first car with us and they don't have bad credit, but they have no credit because they've never borrowed money before. So we work with those individuals who have what's called a thin file so that we can approve them and get them in a car loan that they can afford, and also plan for that car. Will help with educational materials relative to what kind of insurance you're going to need, and so that they can look at the expense of owning a car holistically. You don't really want a car loan, you want a car. You want to ride. You want to be able to drive different places. So we try to work with our members and structure our products so that we can meet those needs.
That's great. That's great. That's pretty cool. I'm curious. I'm a credit union member with GE Credit Union only because my mortgage, our mortgage is held by GE, and I'm not really engaged in the credit union at all. I would imagine sort of building good perceived value among existing members is probably a really important thing to Navy Federal. Can you talk a little bit about that? There's recruiting new members, but retention and bringing value, I would imagine, is also an important part of what you guys do.
You're exactly right, Mark. And for us, that equation is two-sided. One is to talk about value. What's the value you get in a member from a membership organization like ours because you are a member? How are we saving you on rates, products, fees? How are we making it easy to work with us? So those are all part of the value equation. We also know that it's important that we align with your values, plural. That you know that you're here because we are this mission organization. I always talk about people standing in a branch and looking and saying, wait, active duty gets paid early and I don't? Yes, and they deserve it. They've earned it. And the membership is really proud of that. I'm proud to be part of an organization that does allow members to get paid early, and it does allow members, like we are one of the biggest VA lenders in the nation. So we have an expertise around how we can best serve them.
Okay, that's great. And I wouldn't be a good interviewer if I didn't ask you about Chief, which is the organization that you're involved in that's specifically designed for senior women leaders to strengthen their leadership journey, cross-pollinate ideas across industries, and affect change. And I saw that you're a founding member. Can you talk a little bit about Chief and what kind of work it's done to drive more women to the top and keep them there?
Thank you, Mark, for asking about that. I'm honored to be a founding member here in DC. Chief got started outside of DC and really came here, and I was honored to be part of the founders group because the whole premise is good, smart women need each other, and we can all help each other. So Chief allows you to connect in a very confidential as well as professional way to get women of not similar backgrounds because we all come from different industries, which is part of the
Hmm.
magic behind it, for coaching and setting up peer groups. And you also have great accountability with each other. We meet monthly. It can be virtual or it can be in person, and we'll have a different topic each month that's about development. We also will bring sometimes just challenges to each other in terms of how we can talk through those. What I really learned from it, because when I moved to DC, I'd been in Atlanta a long time, had a big professional network that I had developed over time of past clients, past team members, current team members that were across different industries. I
Hmm.
came to DC and really felt like I didn't know anybody besides my peers at my new company. So I really was missing that council of advisors that aren't as close to it that you could confidentially ask information for, both in terms of mentoring as well as just good counsel. So I've never been one of those who had a single mentor, but I've had more of I guess my needs are bigger. I have a council, a board of directors, and Chief has really did that for me, and just valuable executive coaching.
That's great. That's great. Is it a national organization?
It is a national organization. I don't know how many chapters there are currently. DC
Okay.
was new 2 years ago, and so I've just started my second term with them,
Okay.
and continues to grow. Each
That's
market
great.
has its own, as you might know. DC has a lot of individuals here that work with the government in lots of different shapes and forms, people
Sure.
that are lobbyists or advocates that work on the Hill. That's unique to this market. So I've
Yeah.
had some experience to be with some of those women that I typically
Yeah.
wouldn't interact with as much.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be kind of cool. Just, yeah, learning about, their worlds and the challenges that they deal with have got to be, you know, different on many levels than what you deal with every day. So, and probably in some cases, or maybe many cases, a lot of the issues are the same. But that's great. Yeah, I just found that really interesting. And I actually, this week, I was reaching out to a prospect on the other side of our business, and I noticed that she was also a member of Chief, and I was trying to remember her name, but I just found it interesting that I ran into somebody else who was also part of that group, which is great. So just a few more questions for you. Any advice you would give to a marketer thinking about bringing a new agency on board? And it's a question I ask everybody in every interview, and I think it'll be interesting hearing your answer to that question, given you've spent 30 years on the agency side. So, what advice would you give to a marketer thinking about bringing a new agency on board?
Well, if they're seeking a partnership, the onboarding is critical. The more an agency partner understands your business, the better they can do. The better they're going to help you think through the issues, help you think through the objections that you're going to face in terms of selling in a program, and the more they can be an advocate for good work. So, for the client side, being ready to invest in that new partner and help them learn and get up to speed. Our business is complicated. You have to know banking, you have to understand credit unions, you have to understand who we serve, you have to understand a lot of the military. I still learn and grow every day. So you want a partner that, for me, an agency is more than a vendor. It's a partnership.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
investing in the learning and development of that team so that they can work and walk alongside you is really key.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. And last one, I had last two questions. So last question is, any advice you'd give to an agency trying to knock down your door in their attempt to win your business?
Prospecting matters. I have to tell you, for a long time, I used to keep a folder of these are people I'm never going to talk to who send emails that are like, dear, and it'll say name. It's like, okay, I don't want to work with you if I didn't even merit a customized prospecting list. The other ones I really drive me crazy is when somebody sends a link. Here's everything we do. Do you need to buy any of this? Obviously worded in a more elegant fashion, but not really very effective. I mean, think about if you were
Right.
going to the grocery store and the store said, "We sell all of this. What do you want?" It's really do your homework. Make sure you know what you can offer that you think I need, and be smart about it. This
Yeah.
is similar to somebody that you want to have a relationship with. So make sure that you know enough about me that you really want that relationship versus we sell website services. Do you need any? Well, no, if you're going to ask me that way. But let's talk
Yeah.
about the analytics and the metrics that matter and how you've got similar case studies. And so be smart about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, too often, I get this, probably a lot of the same emails you get from, you know, web dev shops and SEO shops telling me how terrible my rankings are, even though they're not. And so, some of it's just really hard to believe. But I think that's great advice for agencies. So, well, listen, Pam, it has been really enjoyable. I was really looking forward to meeting you and speaking with you, and you've provided some great insight. You're working for a great organization that's doing some fantastic things, and it's got to, I totally get why you made the flip over to the marketer side. Particularly with Navy Federal Credit Union, and I wish you all the best and. Thanks again for the time, and you have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too, Mark.